After the light. The city was quiet, but it was not peace. Broken towers leaned like tired sentinels over streets littered with ash and rust, their windows jagged, mouths open to the sky. Neon signs, long dead, cast only faint reflections in puddles of stagnant water, hints of a world that had once hummed with life. The great blackout had left the digital veins of the metropolis severed, and what remained was a skeleton of memory and desire, inhabited by those who had learned to survive in the spaces between the shadows. Lyra moved along the cracked pavement, her footsteps echoing softly. She carried no weapon, no guide, only a small pack with remnants of the old world, a frayed notebook, a vial of distilled water, and a medallion that had once belonged to her mother. The air smelled of ozone and decay, a reminder that electricity no longer ruled the city. Life here had adapted to absence, to the silence of machines and the dim glow of distant fires. It was a world that remembered light but had long since learned in darkness. She paused at a street corner, peering into a collapsed alley where the shadows pooled like ink. Faint traces of movement suggested that she was not alone. Other survivors drifted through the ruins, scavengers and wanderers, faces hidden under hoods and gas masks, speaking in low murmurs or not at all. Some carried fragments of old tech, others fragments of memory, all grasping at the remains of a civilization that had once promised order. Lyra's own memory of the city before the collapse was hazy, a series of images stitched together with emotion rather than fact. She remembered the glow, the noise, the certainty of electricity, and the way it had filled every corner of life with invisible threads of connection. Now she moved through a world where those threads were severed. The absence was palpable. Buildings leaned at odd angles, half ruined and filled with shadows. Faint patterns of light flickered from broken panels, yet they seemed more like echoes than illumination, the remnants of circuits that no longer understood their purpose. Lyra felt the weight of the silence pressing against her. Every step was a negotiation with the empty spaces, a reminder that the city's former heartbeat had stopped, leaving only the rhythm of human survival. She found herself in front of a library, its front doors splintered, shelves overturned. Dust hung in the air, thick and heavy, catching the dim light that filtered through cracks in the walls. Lyra stepped inside cautiously, the floorboards creaking beneath her boots. Here, knowledge persisted, though scattered and incomplete. Books with yellowed pages, data drives with corrupted files, and stacks of paper whose ink had faded into abstraction. It was a monument to what had been lost, and a testament to those who still sought to remember. Lyra's fingers traced the edges of a desk, finding a stack of journals. Each was filled with observations from another time, accounts of life before and immediately after the blackout. She flipped through them, searching for a sense of continuity, a bridge between what had been and what remained. The entries spoke of adaptation, people learning to navigate the ruins, to cultivate light where there was none, to create meaning in the absence of structure. There was a pattern to the chaos, a rhythm that hinted at the possibility of rebuilding, not in the image of the past, but in the image of those who remained. Outside, the faint glimmer of firelight suggested movement, perhaps another group scavenging, or the remnants of those who had claimed this district. Lyra knew the city was no longer hers alone. Every decision carried risk, every encounter a potential threat. Yet the library offered a strange sort of sanctuary, Within these walls, she could feel the pulse of human endeavor lingering, echoes of lives that had refused to vanish entirely. Memory, in this place, was not digital. It was physical, tangible, and yet fragile. She pulled her pack tighter and continued through the aisles, the smell of old paper and burnt circuits mingling in her nose. She paused before a large window, staring out at the streets below, trying to imagine the city as it once had been. Lights blazing, screens flickering, people moving in patterns invisible yet essential. Now it was silent, and the silence demanded attention. Lyra realized that in the absence of networks, the city itself had become a reflection of memory, distorted, incomplete, yet still capable of life if one knew how to navigate its shadows. Her journey was just beginning. The world after the blackout was vast, dangerous, and unpredictable. But as Lyra moved deeper into the ruins, a quiet determination settled in her chest. She would learn to navigate this new existence, to understand what remained, and perhaps to illuminate a path forward for those who had survived the darkness. Every corner held a fragment, every shadow a lesson, every silence a possibility. The city waited, patient and unyielding, as she stepped further into its fractured light. Lyra moved cautiously through the streets beyond the library, her senses stretched taut. The ruins of the city seemed to watch her, buildings leaning like tired sentinels, shadows pooling in alleys and broken doorways. Neon remnants flickered in distorted patterns, no longer coherent advertisements, but spectral echoes of a world that had once pulsed with information. The absence of the digital network had reshaped the environment. Every corner felt uncertain, every sound amplified, every light a potential trap. She passed a collapsed transport terminal, the skeletal remains of trains and vehicles scattered like fallen giants. Rust and decay claimed the metal, yet beneath it all she could sense traces of movement. Other survivors had passed this way, shapes indistinct, hurried footsteps fading into silence. Lyra kept her head low, noting the subtle signs, scuff marks on the concrete, a faint glimmer of discarded objects, the muted smell of fire where someone had tried to keep warm. Life had adapted to absence. Those who survived were shadowed by it, shaped by it. Her thoughts returned to the journals she had left behind in the library, pages filled with observations of survival strategies, methods of cultivating light, of repurposing old technology in ways the original inventors never intended. The writers had learned to navigate the city's fractured arteries, to find continuity in chaos. Lyra felt the pull of those instructions, the faint guidance of lives long gone, their knowledge etched into every corridor she explored. She understood that memory, physical or digital, was a map of existence, an inheritance she now carried. A faint noise drew her attention, a whisper, a ripple of sound moving against the stillness. She froze, listening. It was not wind. It was deliberate, careful, a presence masked in patience. She crouched, moving along the shadows of a collapsed building, feeling the rhythm of the city beneath her. Neon shards reflected in puddles, fractured images of the sky above, fragmented like her own thoughts. Her pulse matched the rhythm of movement, cautious, deliberate, synced with the heartbeat of survival. The sound led her to an abandoned plaza, cracked tiles stretching beneath the skeletal remains of fountains. Patches of moss and hardy vegetation clinged stubbornly to the ruins. In the center, she saw a figure hunched over a device, dim light flickering across its surface. The glow cast the stranger's face in half-shadow, obscuring identity. Lyra froze, weighing the risk. This could be a scavenger like herself, or someone guarding knowledge they would not share. Every choice carried consequences, every step a negotiation with danger. The stranger looked up, revealing eyes that flickered with awareness, alert to her presence, but not hostile. Lyra exhaled slightly, relaxing some of the tension in her shoulders. The device hummed faintly, a relic of the old network, a spark of the digital pulse that had once bound the city together. She approached cautiously, noting the careful way the figure manipulated the interface, protective as if the knowledge held within were fragile and precious. "Looking for something?" the figure asked, voice low and steady. Words were rare now. Communication had adapted to necessity. Lyra considered her reply, weighing honesty against discretion. "I want to understand what remains," she said finally. "How the city functions without its network. How people live after the light." The figure nodded, gesturing toward the device. "It's not simple. The city has learned to exist without us controlling it. The absence of the network reshaped everything: power, movement, survival. We adapt, or we vanish. Some fragments are stable, others unpredictable. You must be careful what you seek, or the ruins will claim you." Lyra studied the device, sensing the delicate balance it maintained. It pulsed faintly, synchronizing with the rhythms of the abandoned city, recording and transmitting in a silent language she barely understood. Knowledge, she realized, was no longer stored in a single place. It had become diffuse, spread across fragments, human and machine, memory and material. To reclaim it required observation, patience, and an understanding that the city itself had a will, a logic independent of those who wandered its streets. She felt a strange kinship with the figure, two travelers navigating absence together, though their paths might diverge. The glow of the device mirrored her own purpose: to map what remains, to trace the echoes of light and life that had survived the blackout. Every shadow held a story, every puddle reflected a past, every ruin a lesson. The city whispered its truths, and those who listened could begin to understand. A faint breeze carried the scent of smoke and decay, tangling with the memory of old fires and electricity. Lyra adjusted her pack and stepped further into the plaza, aware that the day would soon turn to night, that shadows would deepen, and that survival required constant vigilance. The fragments of knowledge she sought were scattered, elusive, yet alive, pulsing faintly in the veins of the city. To pursue them was to embrace the uncertainty, to walk the edge between discovery and danger. Lyra's eyes lifted to the horizon. Beyond the ruins stretched the darkened city, fractured but not lifeless. Somewhere in its vast expanse, remnants of the old world waited to be uncovered, mysteries folded into the rubble, echoes of the network, whispers of light that had not yet died. Her journey had begun, and the ruins were patient. They would not hurry her, but they would test her at every turn. She moved forward, stepping over debris and broken stone, the weight of memory and possibility pressing on her chest. The world after the light demanded attention, demanded respect, demanded understanding. Lyra felt its pulse beneath her feet, fragile but persistent, and knew she must follow it wherever it led. Night fell gradually, dragging shadows across the fractured streets. Lyra's footsteps were soft, cautious, as she moved deeper into the city's heart. The ruins now seemed less like relics and more like living organisms, breathing in the faint wind, exhaling whispers of past lives. The absence of digital light made every corner uncertain. She relied on instinct, on the subtle signs left by those who had survived the blackout before her. She entered a square dominated by the skeletal remains of a theater, its marquee twisted and unreadable. The hollowed interior held a strange quiet, broken only by the distant hum of some still active circuitry. Dust swirled in the weak beams of moonlight filtering through shattered windows. Here, memory had taken root in unexpected ways. Graffiti etched with cryptic symbols, traces of old performances left on decaying stages, and fragments of old tech repurposed as shelter. Lyra felt the weight of human presence, even when no one remained. On the stage, she discovered a cluster of small lights, faintly blinking. They were scavenger devices, primitive yet persistent, recording ambient noise, vibrations, and temperature shifts. Whoever had set them here had been mapping the space, preserving its essence. Lyra crouched to examine them, careful not to disturb their delicate alignment. The devices seemed almost sentient, each pulse a heartbeat in the theater's memory, a testimony that the absence of the network had not erased awareness, it had only shifted its form. A rustling sound came from the upper balcony. Lyra froze, straining to see through the gloom. A figure emerged, a scavenger, wrapped in tattered cloth, carrying a small bundle. Their eyes met, and for a moment, Lyra sensed no hostility, only the mutual understanding of survival. The stranger spoke softly, words barely audible above the creaking of the old theater. "You follow the light?" Lyra nodded. "I seek what remains, fragments of what we lost, understanding, not control." Her voice sounded strange in the vast emptiness, yet the words carried weight. The figure studied her, hesitation in every movement, then gestured toward the balcony stairs. "Then follow. There are places where light endures, if you know how to see it." She climbed cautiously, the steps groaning under her weight. Each level of the theater revealed more fragments, posters curling with age, scorched furniture, old wiring coiled into strange, intentional patterns. The air smelled of smoke and mildew, mixed with the faint tang of copper from exposed circuits. It was a museum of adaptation, a testament to those who had survived by learning to live in the absence of the network. At the top, the stranger stopped before a doorway leading to a small observation room. Inside, remnants of a projector and scattered glass lenses reflected a faint, pulsing light. The stranger manipulated a mechanism, and the beams coalesced into faint holographic shapes, flickering images of the city as it had once been. Streets alive with people, neon blazing, screens flickering, a network humming with invisible pulses. The images were imperfect, corrupted, fragmentary, yet undeniably real. Lyra stepped closer, mesmerized. For the first time, she could feel the city's former heartbeat. The light, though partial, revealed patterns in the chaos, threads connecting buildings, alleyways, and circuits she had walked blind to. It was a language of absence, an intelligence that had endured despite the blackout. The holographic projection pulsed with rhythm, as if the city itself were alive, observing her, acknowledging her presence. "This is what remains," the stranger said, voice low. "The network is gone, but its memory persists. You must learn to read it, to navigate by its pulse. Only then will you understand the city and yourself." Lyra watched the flickering streets, the ghostly glow illuminating fragments of lives, fragments of past and present intertwined. She understood that survival was no longer merely physical. It was the ability to perceive, to interpret, to follow the light where it persisted in the ruins. Memory had become a guide, fragile yet insistent, leading her through shadows and uncertainty. She inhaled slowly, letting the pulse of the city sink into her bones. The absence of light was not emptiness. It was a challenge, a canvas upon which the survivors could trace new patterns. Lyra felt a quiet determination settle over her. She would learn the city's rhythm, embrace its silence, and navigate the fractured streets with awareness and care. The stranger stepped back, allowing her the space to absorb the lesson. Outside, the wind carried faint echoes of distant fires and abandoned machines, a symphony of survival. Lyra felt herself drawn forward, ready to follow the pulse, ready to reclaim fragments of what had been lost, and ready to confront the shadows of the world after the light. The city's quiet had deepened into a kind of awareness. Lyra stepped from the theater onto a street layered with shadows, the fragmented glow of neon remnants reflecting faintly in puddles of rainwater. Each building seemed to watch her, the ruins attentive, as if gauging her intentions. She felt the pulse of the absent network beneath her feet, subtle, uneven, like the heartbeat of a city that had not truly died. Every step brought new textures, the brittle sound of debris shifting underfoot, the metallic tang of rusted steel, the faint hum of dormant circuits. Here, the past and present intertwined. The holographic memory from the theater lingered in her mind, a map of existence shaped by absence, a testament to adaptation. She realized that the city itself had become both guide and test, and she was a traveler learning its language in fragments. A distant clatter drew her attention, not a threat, but a signal of life. Someone else was moving through the ruins, another survivor, another seeker. Lyra paused, listening. The city had become a network of presence and absence, and every living being now contributed to its faint rhythm. She adjusted the strap of her pack, feeling the weight of her own memories pressing close, mingling with the ghosts of those she had glimpsed in journals, in the theater, in the faint echoes of streets. Her path led her to a bridge spanning a collapsed canal. Water moved sluggishly below, reflecting the broken neon like a shattered mirror. Lyra stepped cautiously onto the structure. Each plank moaned under her weight. She looked down at the flowing current, imagining it carrying fragments of what had been lost. Data, memory, traces of lives once illuminated by electric light. In the absence of the network, the city had learned to preserve itself differently, in physical residues and human memory, in adaptive patterns that survived even when the light was gone. From the far end of the bridge, a faint glow beckoned. It was soft, almost imperceptible, yet persistent. Lyra moved toward it, aware of the tenuous boundary between safety and danger, between illumination and shadow. The glow emanated from a small enclosure, a cluster of salvaged tech woven together into a delicate lattice of light. It pulsed slowly, rhythmically, a beacon in the dark, echoing the city's heartbeat. She reached out, hand trembling slightly. The light reacted, spreading along the wires, tracing the contours of her fingers, merging with the shadows cast by the ruins. Lyra felt a surge of understanding, not complete, but enough. The light was not just a guide. It was a measure of connection, a reflection of human persistence. It revealed patterns, possibilities, and choices that the ruins themselves seemed to offer. Here, memory, presence, and adaptation converged. She lingered, sensing the magnitude of the moment. Survival was no longer merely about movement or finding shelter. It was about perception, understanding the fragile rhythms that persisted beneath destruction. Every shadow held a lesson, every light fragment a potential path. The city demanded respect, attention, awareness. Lyra felt a quiet determination settle deep within her. She would follow the pulse, honor the traces of the past, and navigate the fractured present with care. As she stepped away from the glow, the wind carried faint echoes, distant fires, scattered conversations, the subtle hum of abandoned circuits. The city was alive, in its own way, shaped by absence and memory rather than control. Lyra understood that the journey ahead would test her continuously. Each encounter, each decision, would shape her understanding of this post-network world. She did not know what lay beyond the next ruined block, what truths or dangers waited in the dark. Yet she moved forward, step by shadow, shadow by shadow, guided by the faint pulses of light and memory. The ruins stretched endlessly, their lessons woven into every brick, every puddle, every flickering fragment of neon. Lyra embraced the uncertainty. She had survived the absence of light, and now she would learn to navigate it, to read the city's rhythm, to claim her place within its fractured pulse. The night deepened. The city exhaled, vast and patient. Lyra walked on, carrying fragments of the past, glimpses of what had been, and the fragile hope of what could still be reclaimed. The glow ahead beckoned, never steady, always shifting, a reminder that in this world, light was fleeting, memory was precious, and every step forward was a choice that would echo far beyond herself. And so she continued, a solitary figure threading her way through ruins alive with quiet persistence, a witness to what had survived, a seeker of what remained, stepping into the uncertain horizon of a world after the light.